Facebook, and everything will be okay. Professor, once again, happy to see you.
Good to see you, Mr. Presenter. Good to be here. I'm glad to be back, and once again, to be able to contribute to the national conversation on issues that are affecting us as ordinary citizens. So I'm glad to be here today.
The moment you say as ordinary citizens, someone who is watching is like, oh, this one probably is with us, Omuntu wa wansi.
Yes.
And there's a belief, or I don't know whether you've heard it, that we have classes in Uganda. Kololo versus Katanga.
Oh yes, oh yes. I'm an ordinary citizen who works every day for a living, who suffers the indignities and who enjoys the benefits of being a citizen in this country.
But so, I think everyone goes through the same thing.
Well, ordinary in the sense that I'm not a politician, I don't belong to a political party, you know, and so on and so forth. That makes me ordinary. Your average Joe on the street. Yes.
Well, tonight we want to look at a very interesting topic that I'm just quite certain that many of you will be are extremely interested. And according to the report that was released a few years ago by Transparency International Corruption Perception Index, were released in 2016 in January. It says that Uganda was ranked in ranked in 151 position out of 176 countries in the Corruption Perception Index of 2016. At the same time, Uganda was ranked number 25 as the most corrupt country in the world, only beaten by Somalia, South Sudan, and a few countries. Now we are living in a country that is described by corruption.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, the vast majority of us do not quite understand corruption. And when the vast majority of us simply think about what I would call petty corruption. See, there are different types and levels of corruption, and we can go into the definitions of these. But the one that we normally tend to think about is the petty corruption. For example, you get stopped by a traffic police officer, and maybe you hand them 5,000 shillings or 10,000 shillings. A lot of people, and when they talk about corruption, a lot of people think about this. But when you look at the scale, and we shall perhaps have opportunity to talk about this later, when you look at the scale, the scale goes up to what we would normally call grand corruption, okay, or syndicated corruption.
Mega corruption.
Yes, where you have a syndicate of people working in different departments, ministries, and so on, and organizations, and so on, to cause certain decisions to be made. Okay, and so we have to understand this scale of corruption to be able to even begin to comprehend where we are and what needs to be done. So yes, corruption, true, but we need to understand what is this corruption that everybody keeps talking about. Yeah, what is this corruption? How does it affect us? Where does it start and where does it end? Unfortunately, I say to people that the state in which Uganda is today is what a medical doctor would term multiple organ failure.
Multiple organ failure.
Yes.
Throw more light on that one.
Yes. Multiple organ failure is when a patient has got several organs actually failing to function normally. So somebody might start off with malaria, they get poor medication, you know, they then get diarrhea and so on, and that leads to several things in the body beginning to break down and can't function.
You do not subscribe to any political party, but then politicians have named it the failure of institutions. They're saying that the whole of Uganda, when you look at the government, all institutions died.
Well, yes, institutions, but there are many things. I was thinking about this a short while ago, and I was thinking, okay, what is this? The biggest challenge we seem to have is to assume that our solution to corruption is simply political or legal, okay? And so we tend to have a legalistic wand, okay? Look for them, look for the corrupt people, bring them to court, you know, and so the questions that fly around is when you say there is corruption, say give us proof, okay? But corruption, as I said, in this country is endemic. It's a multiple organ failure occurrence. So the only way for us to tackle it must be at different multi-sectoral level. Okay, it must be a level of approach which engages everything. And when I was thinking about it, it must be political. Okay, there must be political action, there must be legal action, there must be social action, there must be cultural action, there must be economic action, there must be institutional action. It is the only, otherwise if you just say, oh, we have to take them to court, the battle against corruption will never be won. Okay, because where you find, and then the judiciary itself is on record now of pointing a finger at itself. So where you find a prosecutor that is corrupt and a judge that is corrupt, and so on and so forth, what are you going to get? Even if you brought these people to court.
I'm thinking that's probably the reason as why we look at it in a political manner. It is because if any person comes to fight corruption from any angle, you'll be silenced by a certain invisible political hand. So people will call it political because of the probably threats and so forth that comes from the other political angle. Because I'll give you an example. If let me talk about a priest comes out and condemns corruption, it will be a politician that will attack him. If a musician in the names of Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu talks about against corruption, the response will come from the political angles. So many people will end up making a conclusion that, probably the best way to fight corruption, it should be political.
Well, that's the problem I pointed out at the beginning of this conversation, that the danger we stand in this country is to assume that the fight against corruption is simply political, so that everybody who begins to talk about corruption must be seen as being political. And so that denies us as a country real, true solutions to the corruption issue. But most importantly, we then get confused in terms of how do we deal with this. So rather than addressing the true causes of corruption and trying to find real solutions to corruption, we're busy looking around for political answers to the problem of corruption. And that is the danger we're in. And unless as a country we begin to reshape the conversation around corruption, we are going to be getting solutions that will never work.
But I think we should have that one that is going to lead us in reshaping. And who is this one?
Well, essentially, like I'm saying, you and I, the ordinary citizens, must take leadership in this conversation, because the political parties, the political actors appear to be failing to give this country, the right set of tools to deal with corruption. So for example, the idea of having a phone call is very good. And I had the fact that, once the telephone line was established, we had several hundreds of phone calls. But those phone calls are not going to help us to deal with the fundamental issues of corruption. And I say to you, right now in Uganda, corruption is culture.
Oh,
okay.
I beg your pardon.
Yes.
I beg your pardon. What did you say?
I said right now in Uganda, corruption is culture. Everything that gets done is driven by some form of acceptance of corruption as being the norm. Okay, we've now accepted as a nation that corruption, a kid wants to go to school and what do you do? Okay, you want a job, what happens? Because we have failed to define corruption, and I can tell you it's a multiple organ failure problem. Employment, who gets hired? That's corruption. Okay. The day the country lost meritocracy, we now have an area where non-meritocratic advantages are the norm. Okay? So there's lack of transparency in the way things are done. So my late father used to say to us that the devil loves dark places. So the moment there's no transparency in the way things are done, that is where the devil is likely to be. And so in my view, the best way for us to actually tackle this problem head on is to approach it from various angles. Yes, legal angle. When we get the corrupt people, we take them to court. But I can ask you a simple question. I came of age about 30 years ago. I mean, in the last 30 years, how many public officials have been taken through the court system, okay, and jailed for corruption?
We shall get back. Actually, we shall get to this.
Yes.
And now you're talking about the angles.
Yes.
Now, don't you think that religious we failed?
Well, I wouldn't call it the religious angle. I would call it the moral, ethical angle.
Recently,
yes.
The FDC came out and said that religious leaders in Uganda should take a leaf, copy a leaf from the likes of Martin Luther King, who stood against what was wrong. Copy from Desmond Tutu of our religious leaders stood out. We are looking at all angles. How about religious leaders? Are they involved in the war?
I think they are to varying degrees, depending on who you're actually talking to or listening to.
On a scale of 10?
Well, like I say, it depends on the individuals and the entities that you're talking about. But I think they're involved. What we need, however, would be a better organized and concerted effort against corruption.
From them?
Yes. So that it's not simply an individual leader talking, but establishments talking and dealing with this corruption issue. But like I said, part of the problem is a poor definition of what corruption is. Okay? But the other part, like I say to you, is we see corruption, it's a culture. It's between you and I. It's the thing we do in Uganda. You know? And let's just simply look at the way we behave. Okay? It is known that vehicles with government number plates are the worst traffic offenders on our roads. Okay? So that simply means, where there is a culture of impunity, corruption is likely to be present. Because if I can drive on the pavement of the road and no police officer, however senior they might be, can touch me, that is corruption. That simply means that it has become a culture. If you drive on the roads of Kampala, you will see any government registered vehicle can run anybody off the road anytime. And nobody can touch them. So what are you talking about corruption? Once you have an attitude that I am untouchable, then you're not too far from corruption. Because you're untouchable, you're bound to do anything and anytime, anyhow you like. Okay? So that is my view, that you see, it has become a culture that is embedded in our entire value system, if we have such a thing as a value system in Uganda.
Talking of the culture, we now count over 30 years of fight against corruption by the NRM. Let's talk about the era of the NRM. One of the points in the 10 key points program, it is zero tolerance to corruption. And now you've said it has become a culture. I'm quoting some words of a certain gentleman in Kenya who says, we are the architects of our own misfortune. If it has become a culture, and we now understand, because on a number of occasions, we know the people that have been involved in the scandal.
Yes.
So what are our leaders doing?
Well, I think
probably we could raise a voice,
yeah,
but then they should act.
I think each person is doing what they understand to be best. Unfortunately, in Uganda, the effort is all over the place. Everybody seems to want to do their own thing. And the reason for that is everybody is trying to outdo everybody else. So if I have an agenda to fight corruption, I want to be seen to be the only person that is fighting corruption. That is one. But secondly, we are not working on this, from the same hymn book. That means everybody is singing something different because people are seeing corruption as something different. The moment you get a country that tolerates the corrupt, you cannot fight corruption, however well-intentioned you are. In civilized nations, a public officer who has been implicated in grand corruption cannot be allowed to stay in office. So there is absolutely, it is a joke for you to imagine that we are going to fight corruption when we tolerate it. As a matter of fact, now in the streets, the corrupt are celebrated because the attitude is, oh, you've been able to steal from the government.
And you're considered to be wise.
Yes, you're considered to be successful. Mm-hmm. But why is that the case? Because they are viewing those that are in positions of power and responsibility who are actually demonstrating corruption tendencies. Many of them have been mentioned, even though not yet proved in court, but they've been mentioned in corruption cases. But they're still driving around, okay, with several pickup trucks of security personnel protecting them. Now, tell me, what about the guy riding a boda boda? You see, I say that in a family, for example, if the mother or the father is violent, what do you expect the kids to become?
Definitely violent as well.
Okay, so from my humble view, the people that are in positions of responsibility and so on are the ones that are setting the trajectory for corruption in Uganda. They're the ones that are setting the pace for corruption in this country.
Well, recently,
yes,
the President of the Republic of Uganda, General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, came out and said that, actually I will go back to 2016. I covered the story in Kololo, where he dubbed this term Hakuna Mchezo. Yeah. Recently, he came out and said that, now I'm coming with a new twist of fighting corruption. We would say in Uganda. He went on and decided to appoint someone, gave her a very awesome position to lead the commission that is going to fight corruption. Just like we see Catherine Bamgemerere leading the
charge, yes.
Yes. Probably I will add on, let us first watch this video, and when we come back, we can be able to actually ascertain every bit of whatever he said.
Okay.
Of public funds is still going on. Ate abakulira obubi bw'essente za gavumenti be bano. Permanent Secretary Ministry yakulira obubi bwa ssente mu ministry. Kubanga yasaanidde yalina obuyinza mu ssemateeka okuyimirira ku ssente za gavumenti. N'olwekyo bw'aleka ababbi ne bazibba oba ye kennyini n'azibba guba musango gwe. How we can quickly and effectively assess the public servants who are in charge now and who are responsible for all these mistakes, so that we get rid of them and get new people, or they reform and become good. It is doable because we have enough manpower. We can no longer be blackmailed by the few corrupt people, because there are many other Ugandans who are there ready to do this work. Omulimo gwa Nakalema tagenda kuwamba emirimu gya IGG. IGG gwe mulimu gwe okulondoola ababbi bano. Auditor General mulimu gwe okulondoola ababbi. CID mulimu gwe okulondoola abatemu. Naye Nakalema ye mutaddewo nga eriiso lyange. Bwe bakuba essimu n'ogamba nti tufudde ewaffe, ababbi batumazeewo eddembe, nti nafuna bwino n'akubira ogwekikwatako.
We can never be blackmailed by a few people. He says because we have enough manpower.
Well,
sorry for cutting you short. He continues and says, Edith Nakalema, that has been appointed, will not do the work of the IGG or Auditor General. Is she viable to fight corruption that Mr. Museveni is talking about?
Well, I'm kind of reluctant to speak about individual cases of the fight against corruption, primarily because that misses the point. Okay, it's almost like saying you've suffered with jiggers for 30 years. Okay, initially you tried this method and you tried that method, and now you're trying the pin. Okay, so all these are methods, and they could or could not work. But our history shows that all the methods that have been tried have failed. Okay,
it doesn't give us a guarantee that this one will fail. Actually, he gave us even the numbers.
We don't know, but if you're looking at history, then every method that has been tried has actually failed.
That is the number. Call this to report against.
Yeah, no, that is true, yes. But you see, what we're talking about is one type of corruption. You know, when you talk about the corruption of the senior civil servants and so on, that is what we would normally call grand corruption.
Now, probably we should start with grand corruption.
Yeah, grand corruption is greed-driven and occurs at the highest levels of government in ways that require subversion of public, legal, and economic systems of the country. Okay? Now, these people are usually well connected. Okay? They have syndicates and networks of people. And so it would be one of the reasons why you can't see a case of a PS who has ever been arrested, taken to court, jailed, okay, for a corruption case, is primarily because most of them will never be found with their hand in the what? In the honeypot. Because they are syndicated. They actually get the money through syndicates. Okay? There's a deal to do something, to purchase something, and through the syndicates, they actually get kickbacks and so on and so forth. So you will not find them with the actual loot in terms of the process. Okay, so
Professor, talking about grant-driven corruption, the
greed-driven,
yes. So the greed-driven, you seem to laugh at the commission and Edith Nakalema that was appointed by the president.
No, I think if you listened to the president, he was specific that Edith Nakalema is his ears and eyes.
But he has 1,000 ears and eyes, just like a certain gentleman said that President Museveni has over 1,100 advisors, but when they meet him, they take long to meet him. But when they meet him, it is
what do they tell him?
It is
you see, for me, I don't want even to say whether it will succeed or fail, because at the end of the day, you know, when you are able, let's say somebody is suffering from malaria, and they're able to actually work out that their temperature is so high, okay? That doesn't mean they're going to cure from malaria. And this is what I'm hearing about Nakalema, that she's able to tell us that, oh, there's this type of corruption. What I would like to hear are the mechanisms of actually bringing the people to book. What is the mechanism that is there? It's not changed.
But, we are still with Professor. He's a senior consultant in business development. We are taking a short commercial break after the president coming out and saying that, I have a new commission headed by Edith Nakalema. The Forum for Democratic Change, leading opposition party, came out and laughed and said, please, Mr. Museveni, tell us some other kind of a conversation, but you can never comment about corruption. We are taking a short commercial break. When we return, we shall be able to see those people, and we are going to be able to tackle the issue of Kosase, the probing about the Bank of Uganda stuff. Keep your eyes on Record TV. My name is Mordecai Mlisa Martin Jr.
Binji bibela omunsi, but you cannot be everywhere. That's why Towadeo Kutusako, all the latest entertainment news. This source, Monday to Friday, Sawasatu, Kunya, Zakumacha, Taswa.